So I want to talk about three things. Number one, the constitutional backgrounds of this issue. Number two, the vaccine mandate, which I'm litigating right now against the Biden administration. And number three, Kansas first. So first of all, the constitutional background. Look, when the Founding Fathers, and I taught this in constitutional law at UMKC for 15 years, when the Founding Fathers started thinking about how to defend this new country, they provided a few things in the Constitution. In Article 1, they said that Congress shall have the power to call forth the militia. They also said that Congress shall have the power to declare war. But in the Second Amendment, which was drafted in 1789, right after the Constitution was drafted in 1787, they said the security of a free people. Let's see. I have this memorized. Security of a free state. The well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of a free state. That's the preface. Why did they throw that in there? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall be infringed. It's that preface I want to get to. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The Founding Fathers were in a situation where they had the utmost respect for General Washington, not yet President Washington, who had just won the war with a Continental Army. Yet they also saw the security of a free state being centered on state militias. What did militia mean? At that time, it meant the body of free people called to arms. And so they had this sense of we're going to have a state-based defense of our new nation. But we also recognize that what General Washington did with a unified army was also important, and we're going to need a navy which probably isn't going to be state-based. And so they had this sense that Congress would be able to call forth the militia and unite them into a national army. Yet at the same time, the power was going to reside in the states. It was not going to be some ability for an unelected official, some unelected general to just snap his fingers and say, all right, state militias, you're coming, and you're going to do what I want. It's going to take an act of Congress to call forth the militia. It's going to take an act of Congress to declare war. And so this structure that they imagined of our defense of our nation being based really in the states as much as in any centralized army was critical to our constitutional founding fathers' view. And so I am saying that I am for this bill because I'm for the Constitution and I'm for states' rights. That's what this is all about. You know, people on the state sovereignty. That's exactly what it is. People on the political left like to talk about our Constitution being outdated. Now, it was drafted by a bunch of dead white guys in 1787. No, our Constitution does not need to be rewritten. Our Constitution needs to be reread. For too long, we have been doing things that are not consistent with our Constitution. For too long, we've been fighting wars that are never declared according to the Constitution, and for too long, the state National Guards have been called forth, and they are a second definition of the militia in our Constitution. One is, it still means the free people, as Justice Scalia said in the Heller opinion about a decade ago, but it also means the National Guard. And we've just been disobeying the Constitution, and it's become the habit. Well, I'm telling you, it's time for states to stand up and say, no, wait, let's just follow the Constitution. This is not a radical bill. This is not some sort of dramatic thing. This is simply a call to follow the Constitution. Just because we've not been following the Constitution doesn't mean that that is the new norm. We have to simply say this is all about following the Constitution. Okay, second part, the vaccine mandate. A critical component of this bill is that it denies the federal government the ability to tell our Kansas National Guard, the Kansas Air National Guard, that they have to take a vaccine. I mean, this is absolutely insane. So, step back to January 28th of this year. I was giving a speech on freedom from vaccine mandates in Wichita. After the speech, a member of the Kansas Air National Guard and an active duty Air Force pilot at McConnell Air Force Base came up to me and said, Kris, can you help us? And I said, what's going on? They said, well, we are about to be discharged from the military because we're refusing to take the vaccine based on our sincerely held religious beliefs. I said, okay, tell me more. And then we kept on talking. And as a result of those talks, on March 8th, I filed a lawsuit on behalf of 36 airmen in Kansas and Nebraska against the vaccine mandate. We filed that lawsuit in Nebraska. A slight majority of the plaintiffs are from Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, and the others are mostly from McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita. This lawsuit's really important because we are taking on the Biden administration's insistence that they can tell everybody in the military, including National Guardsmen, who are not, of course, full-time, and tell them, hey, you got to get a vaccine. I don't care about your religious freedom. I don't care about your beliefs. You just got to take this vaccine. And so we brought this lawsuit. We filed a motion for preliminary injunction about a week ago, and this case is moving quickly. You may have heard about the Navy SEALs case in Texas. Very similar allegations. We argue that our First Amendment freedoms of our plaintiffs are denied when their religious free expression is ignored. Also, the RFRA, Restoration of Religious Freedom Act of 1993, is also being violated. Let me give you some facts about this. So the military has been denying all kinds of religious freedom requests. Bob said every single one. Almost. In effect, it's every single one. So in the Air Force, but when I say Air Force, I mean Air National Guard, the Air Force Reserves, and the Active Duty Air Force. In that subset of the military, there have been approximately 5,000 denials of religious accommodation requests, religious exemptions to the vaccine mandate. There have been only 23 grants, and all of those 23 grants were for show. They were military members who were already about to be retired, and they were asking for this exemption, and so the military, in order to create the impression that they were giving some exemptions, said, okay, yeah, we'll call it a religious exemption. That's a 99.6% rejection rate. We know that this is just show. The military is rejecting virtually all. Every serious religious accommodation request is being rejected. It's not being granted, as the military is showing some sort of tolerance to our free exercise of religion. In contrast, the Air Force, those three branches of the Air Force, if you will, have granted approximately 3,000 medical exemptions and administrative exemptions to the vaccine mandate. Oh, wait a minute. If it's imperative for our national security and readiness that we have no exemptions, why did they grant 3,000 of these secular exemptions, but virtually zero medical exemptions, religious exemptions? The military is completely disregarding the free exercise of religion of our airmen. And that's what this lawsuit is all about. But remember, it was the National Guard who came forth and said, hey, Kris, can you help us? Because the Kansas National Guard is seeing their rights violated. And if we pass this bill, that will make the legal position of the Air National Guard and the National Guard generally much stronger, not only in Kansas, well, in Kansas especially, but then we will hopefully see other states following suit. And let me tell you, if I'm successful in this race for Attorney General, I would happily defend this bill if it becomes law in court, because we will win. This bill is about the Constitution, and it's about the freedom that our people who are fighting for our own freedoms deserve to have protected. I mean, how ironic is that? That the people who are willing to lay down their lives for our freedom are having their own constitutional freedoms taken away. One more point on this lawsuit. Any idea how much it costs the U.S. taxpayer to train a pilot of a KC-135 in Wichita or an RC-135 in Nebraska? That's what I was thinking when I took this lawsuit. But then we did a little research. The Rand Corporation did a study because the Air Force asked them to do a study. How much are we actually spending to train these pilots? $5.5 million per pilot. Among the plaintiffs in our lawsuit, we have 17 pilots. That's $93.5 million that the federal government is going to flush down the toilet by discharging these pilots just because they won't take a vaccine. And our pilots in our lawsuit aren't the only ones. There's hundreds of them out there. We're talking about billions of dollars in American taxpayer money to train the most capable, most expert, well-qualified pilots in the world, and we're going to fire them because they won't take a shot that doesn't do any good against Omicron, a shot that we have now seen doesn't prevent the spread, doesn't prevent you from getting it. It's all about politics. It's not about readiness. It's not about protecting the taxpayer. It is outrageous. And these brave men and women who have put their careers into the Air Force and also the other branches of the military are finding that now the government doesn't care. It's going to kick them to the street. And we, the taxpayers, are left holding the bill. Why did we spend so much money training these excellent warfighters if we're just going to fire them? I mean, it's outrageous. Oh, and by the way, you can't replace them. You can't just like go to Southwest Airlines and say, hey, you got any pilots for us to fly these military aircraft? No, it still takes years to train them. Okay, third point, really quickly, Kansas first. One thing I've seen in state government over the years is that every once in a while there's an issue like this one, where one state has to take the lead. One state has to say, okay, we'll do it. Then a second state follows, and then whoop, the whole, well, not the whole country, but many, many states do this. So I was involved in another issue like this, and that was photo ID for elections and election security, right? So the first state to take the leap and say, you know what, we're going to do this, was Indiana. Indiana passed the first photo ID law. It goes through the courts, it's upheld, and then following on are a couple of other states, including Kansas. And I wrote the bill in 2011 that gave Kansas photo ID, proof of citizenship when you register, and the equivalent level of security for both mail-in ballots and ballots that you cast in person. It was, by far, Kansas still has the most secure election laws in the country. When we did that, then that led to other states following. Alabama drafted a law almost identical to Kansas law, word for word. And so all it takes is one or two states to say, okay, we're going to do this. Then other state legislators think, oh, wow, actually that worked. And people like it. And maybe I could be the person who does it in my state. So that brings us to defend the guard. There are many states considering this, as we just heard from Dan, but there needs to be one that says, okay, fine, we're going to do it, and we're going to show the other states that this makes sense. Kansas has led so many times in our nation's history, and I think this is another area where Kansas can and should lead. Pass this bill on behalf of the Constitution and on behalf of the religious freedom of the men and women who serve in the National Guard. Other states will follow. Let's lead from Kansas once again. Thank you very much.